That's a loom. That's a fairly new loom. That's a much older loom, which it was used for making sheets. And it was all in very small pieces, and they were actually sewn together. It's a very old one. That's a hand. Those are combs for hands. A hand, and obviously which is being, it's hard, it's being kept in water, and then it's being worked. Ti vorrei passare di lì perché ci facesse suonare questo coso, questo scarecrow. It's what we called apple grater. That's an apple grater for making cider. In the mountains where there was very little grape, and there wasn't enough to make wine, so they used in order to have a sort of alcoholic drink, they made this cider, which is obviously still in being drunk, well, in other fashion, but in the England and the States, etc. So this is what it was. This was used for making wine, but it's so small, so tiny, so primitive that we have little doubt. The bread kneading machine.
Repeat, please.
Bread kneading machine. To make, actually, when you get flour and water and salt, and you get this sort of pasta, but it's not really, it's got to be soft. In order to make it soft, I use this one. It's being used in 2 people, one on one side, keeps it up and press it down, picks it up and press it down, and normally it's the woman that works it up underneath, down there. Going to the kitchen, which we always say is the women reign. But the women also did a lot of other things, not only in the kitchen, but they helped the men in the fields, and they had the children, and they really worked very hard. So we now got to the bread. We got to the this pasta, and we are here at the oven to bake the bread. So we got a flat iron plate underneath. We obviously have the fire on it. When it's very hot, it gets hot very, 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 very quickly and very easily. We take the charcoal out. We put the bread there. We cover it up, and then we put the charcoal on top of the cover as well. And here the bread bakes. Now this is a wonderful thing. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful object. Wonderful in the sense that it's terracotta and it's all mended. This is really actually it's a symbol of the women's work. See how many bits and pieces. The women actually stick together, certainly because they had no money to buy a new one. But look at this. I mean, this is all wire. And it's actually, I mean, it's mended to the nth degree. It couldn't be mended anymore, but yet it worked the way it was. After that, which was very fragile, obviously, we passed on to the iron ones. But even so, they broke, and so they put string and iron to stick it together. Wire, etc. These are the cupboards. The cupboards, I mean, as you can see, these cupboards are homemade. This is actually a trunk. It's a complete trunk. there was so little to keep in it that it was sufficient. But it's a wonderful thing to think that out of this big tree they made something which actually held all the things they had, all the places they had. Even the door was made out of it. That as well, and that. This is a bed warmer. Still being used. I've used it myself in the old days.
Me too.
It's made of wood with some tin. Obviously, this is some tin on one side and the other because it would otherwise burn the sheets. You put it in between the sheets, but it's very cold. In between the sheets, this is the actual charcoal container. But the charcoal container is out of a helmet very often. See, it could be a helmet. Anything would do. As I said, one thing was used, things were used and reused, and they had different use. See, this is another helmet.
First
Presumably
World
for the
War.
First World War. This is a chimney. Again, it's another helmet. Anything would do. The chopping boards. Here we have chopping boards. Normally, I mean, you had the for your supper. This was for chopping vegetables or fat, and you used it for making your supper or your meal anyway. And it was so much use, as you can see. It's got holes in it, and this is actually more than holes. You can see through this one. So this actually shows you how much it were used.
On a side and another. Giralo.
Which side? No. Giro? Sì, no.
Questo?
No, quello che avevi in mano.
Quale?
Usato
This
solo
one.
quei lati, fai vedere che...
Ah, sì. No,
non
questo,
quello, là.
questo sì. Beh, certo, sì, sì, perché se si vede...
Giralo bene. Ok.
Perché di qua la carne e di là le verdure, di solito. Ah sì?
Boh,
A casa mia
e bisogna vedere in quale famiglia,
a casa mia.
Parli in inglese, please.
Two sides to it. Vabbè, diciamo così allora. Two sides to it. So on one they were chopping vegetables, on the other one they were chopping meat, but it was so little meat. They were it was hardly used, in my opinion.
Quando si svolge, piano piano.
Ok.
Our last venue, which is a room divided into two, in the sense that one side is devoted to shoes and the other one something else. So here we have a monkey, and we have a bear, the head of a bear. Strange things to be in this museum, but not so, because this was one of the oldest type of immigration. The monkeys and the bears were actually dressed by both, first of all, by people who lived in the mountains, that not very far from here, from a place called Bedonia normally, and that had very, very, very little land, tiny bit, and they didn't have enough to eat, enough to keep to the ferries. So they emigrated, and they bought the animals, and they went to do a show, but not very near home, because they were really ashamed of what they did. They were very far away. They went abroad, they went to Austria, to France, to Germany, to England, to the States even. Here we have pictures, real pictures, and here is the one-man orchestra. So nothing has been invented recently. One-man orchestra, one-man band. See, with the, he actually got the drums and accordion and probably something else as well. Oh yes, the plates. And here's the sort of a stick where the monkey walks, keeping on the balance. And here is the dresses which the monkeys wore, like here. The monkeys are all dressed up on these charts, and they go. One is ahead and the other one is behind. And these are toys which the monkeys used when they went around doing their show in these places. They were actually ashamed because, especially abroad, of course, they were regarded as thieves, as children's slavery, taking children into slavery, because very often they had their children with themselves and were imprisoned, and they were dirty, and so their life was really, really extremely poor. And we have actually it started long time ago, from the 1750. We have memory of this, and it was a real, very, very poor life. And all this was actually given to the museum by one of the nephews, nephew of one of these Corti, one of these people. But they went to Egypt, and Near East and Far East. They went so far away, and quite often they didn't even come back. They actually stayed there because the journey was so long and so hard, and because very often they had no money to come back with. And so the families were split, and it was a very sad page of this immigration story. On this side we have shoes. Now this wall really tells another story. Tells the story of very poor people that wore the shoes that are here. Not everyone had shoes. Very often they went barefooted, and these clogs were used with ice. They had nails on them. It was the only way of walking on ice, but feet couldn't have been very comfortable. This is a symbol of our museum. Now, if we have a look at this tells a real story. Perhaps it was worn by more than one person. More than one person in the family wore this shoe. See, in the end, it was so worn up and worn out that it had wire to keep it all together. But there was a way of lengthening the shoes, because people couldn't buy shoes every year. So these are fairly new shoes. This is a demonstration, actually. So it was cut on top, and then you put a bit on top here, and then a sole here, and then you have a lengthen the shoe, and you could wear it for another year or 2 years. Because you could do the same thing more than once. This wall also tells a story. It's a life story here. Because it starts from very tiny baby's shoes. or their mothers sometimes, baby shoes to the big ones. And so you could see the line of life in a way. It was difficult for Guatelli to put together this wall because he was never quite happy of how it came about. But then if you actually look at it, I was saying of the shoe wall, and saying that if you look at it, and if you look at it without actually taking the head out, you keep the eye on it, and at some point, everything comes together, and you see, it's really one thing. You don't see the lines anymore. It's blurred. This is, to me, is actually what the life is, what the life was of those people. It was actually blurred. That it was the poverty that really comes really across in a way. Because you don't see the very poor, if you stand far away, you don't see the very poor shoe, you don't see the worst ones. But if you come close, you see them. But as I said, as you come away, everything comes together. It's a kind of harmony. This is a unique piece. It could be in any museum in the world, not just in this particular museum. It has a date on it, which is 1866, and it's a stone. It's actually obviously very thick stone, and also see the way it's made. And if you look at it, you see that on one side, on the right side, it's sliding down, and we think that it was used by somebody who had a stiff leg. He couldn't bend his knee, and by sitting like that, he was very comfortable. And I'll tell you, not long ago, a lady came who actually was walking with a stick, and she had a trouble with her right leg. And she sat down here, and she found it very comfortable. So this is proof that it works. And the shoemakers' machines, very old ones obviously, some models in it, and laces, and some other older shoes. And socks that go in a way on a par with the shoes, because they are so mended. So pieces taken by anywhere, everywhere. We've got a pair of trousers here, which, as a joke, you could say they're very modern, but they're not a joke. It's not a joke, because these were worn to the nth degree, and when they couldn't be worn anymore, they cut pieces out of it to mend some other things, like socks, or like some other pairs of trousers. So this was life in those days. This is story, but this is also history. This is our history.